Welcome to the Evolve and Elevate with Erica. We are so excited to be here with you all this evening. We thank you so much for joining us as always. I want to first thank everyone who, for all of the celebratory and birthday wishes. I greatly appreciate that on last week as we celebrated 1 year with Evolve and Elevate with Erica, as well as it was my birthday. So, very happy for all of that and all of the wonderful comments and the love that everyone shared. So, I am your host, Erica Bishop, and we thank you again for being with us as we are here to empower your self expression, elevate your personal growth, as well as empower you with self discovery and transformation. So, with me, I have my co host here tonight, Miss Alicia Johnson from the 1212 community. I'm going to turn it over to her so that she can say hello.
Hello, 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 everybody. I am Alicia Johnson, the creator of the 1212 community. And the 1212 community is a community that I needed when I was learning to recalibrate my life 12 hours for God and 12 hours for man. And we are here to help everyone who chooses to change their lives 3 hour in 3 hour intervals at a time by living and learning to live your life spirit first, mind second, and body third. And that is who I am.
And as always, it is such a pleasure to have you with us. And as you are coming in, we ask that you please share this broadcast with all of your friends and family and to let them know that we are here tonight. We greatly appreciate that. And we thank you so much also for tuning in. So, tonight, as we're into the month of July, it's hard to believe we're already in the seventh month of this year. We're going to be talking about hindsight is 2020, lessons learned from life's detours. So, as you know, life sometimes will start lifing and detours will be a part of the process. And as we go about life, we understand that things don't always turn out the way we would like for them to. But hindsight 2020, when we look back, those things worked out for our good. Those things that seemed like it was not at the right time, it didn't make any sense. It showed up later on that it was the best thing for us. So, as we always start, we kind of either start with some type of conversation or a question or a story to get into the topics. And oftentimes, when we think about life itself, we have what we call plan B, that if things don't go the way we want them to, then we always can fall back on plan B. So I would like to share one of the things that I didn't think that was working the way I wanted to, which was when I relocated here to South Carolina. I was living in Atlanta, thought I was living my best life. I was in this wonderful, big, beautiful city. And I had to return back to South Carolina after I had made a vow that I would never return to South Carolina because I did not want to come back. Yeah,
Mm.
one of those situations. So lo and behold, about 2.5 years later, not I don't even think it was 2 years later, relocated back here to South Carolina, and I've been here ever since 1999.
Oh, wow.
So, and even all the opportunities where I thought I had to possibly leave, God said, no, it's not for you to go. With this has come more opportunities and expanding in the workplace from a professional standpoint, starting businesses, growing in ministry, as well as raising my children, and they're doing excellent, by the way, just in their life and their living, which I did not think. I thought was the worst thing that we could ever do was move back to South Carolina. But hindsight 2020 was the best thing that we could have ever done at the time that we did it, because not knowing what life was going to bring along the way,
Mm.
with all the obstacles from physical health to financial disappointment, and all the things that put you in a position where there were times when there was no money in the bank. There were times when I didn't know what was going to happen with my health of my family members, and we needed to be here. And even so, God worked it out that my mom moved down to Columbia. I'm in the city of Columbia, and the support system that was available at the time was what was needed with my life being in, I'm going to use the word, a crisis
Mm.
situation. So when we think about how some things just don't work out the way we want them to, God has a way of bundling it all together and showing you, if you did not have the support system that you had at the time when all these things started, because I knew what was coming down the pipe, you would not have survived. Even with my own health and the different things that had happened, it would not have worked out the way that it needed to. And even with the state of some of the situations that happened in the economy, in the world, just as it was I was in the right place at the right time. And what I learned was I wasted some time being mad at God
Mm.
in the beginning, because at that point years ago I thought that I could secretly be mad at God and he not know about it, but that didn't work out. So it's like, how did that work out for you? So, but what it did, it grew me closer to the Lord, because it had to authenticate my faith and get me to a place where I began to see miracles in places where life was such a big old mess. So, Alicia, I'm going to ask you the question: when was there a situation, hindsight looking back, it ended up being the best thing, even though it didn't start off that way?
Oh wow. Pretty much every aspect of my life that I surrendered to God. Like for the longest time, I didn't want anything that was in my life. It's like I was like, surely this is not of God. Surely this is not the way it was supposed to turn out. Surely this is not. And so I went through many years of just thinking that everything that I was doing was wrong. I'm in the wrong career. I've got the wrong husband. I've got the wrong house. It's like somehow I just chose wrong. Like God was like, you're not that powerful. Like for real. Like we actually think,
Right.
I mean, I don't know, I actually thought that I could do something to thwart God's plan. Like, I really thought that little old me with the free will that I was wielding, that I could somehow throw everything off. God was like, I don't care what plan you choose, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, whatever. I know what's going to happen. So there is absolutely nothing that shocks heaven.
Hmm.
And so I personally had to lean into understanding that where I was just where I needed to be, and whatever detours heaven needed to put me on. Like this is the way God gave it to me, like certain visuals. For example, when you're on like a major highway,
Hmm.
like you're on that highway and there are very few ways you can get off. But if you get off at it on an exit, then you can go different routes. You can go the scenic route. You can go the route that parallels the highway. You can go a whole bunch of different ways, but you're still moving in the same direction.
Hmm.
And so heaven was like, you're still moving in the direction that I need you to move in. The problem is that we get to choose how quickly or how slowly we get there, and how much time we want to spend with the blessing. And what God began to show me is that your marriage is going to be healed. How quickly it is healed, that is where your responsibility lies. And so I think about like the relationship that Mike and I have now. Our relationship was going to be healed,
Hmm.
but if we had not leaned into the work, we probably would have been doing our deathbed confessions. I really do love you. We really could have made this work. It really, God say, see, y'all gonna be together one way or the other. It's gonna work out, but you get to determine how much time you want to spend with the blessing. So there is absolutely no detour that we can make that is going to throw God off. You jeopardize your opportunity with how much time you want to spend with and in the blessing.
That's powerful. So when we think about surrender, why do you believe that so many people struggle and find themselves in a tug of war with God to surrender?
Oh, then now that look of all the questions, now that one's easy right there because people have control issues. We a lot of us, and I include me in this, we translate and transfer man made or human characteristics onto God. And so we want to when we surrender to God, we feel like we're losing. Cuz in the world, when you surrender to someone, it's like now they have authority over you. So when you transfer those human characteristics onto God, you're imagining that God is like man, where if I surrender, then I'm weak. If I surrender, then I've lost. If I surrender, but we've got to reestablish our understanding of how heaven works and how God is not like man, and where it is when you surrender, you're actually made strong. Like your surrendering is not a weakness. Your surrendering is locking arms with heaven, and that is actually making you stronger.
That's powerful. When I found myself in that tug of war, of course, I was losing, thinking that I could usurp God and his ideas weren't better than mine. And I was finding myself in that place of trying to negotiate and say, well, God, well, if you do this, I'll do this. Well, if it comes out this way, I promise I'll do this. And then we figure out that the plan that you thought you had in your mind, because our mind is so finite, we can't see what's coming around the corner. Some of us, we can't even see what's 10 feet in front of us because we're so consumed with what we have that's happening that we can't even see our hand in front of our face. And then when God really begins to peel back the, I'm going to say, the curtains of safety, we then realize how secure we are in the dynamics of heaven and how much God protects us and safeguards us from the foolishness of our own decisions that could have literally not only destroyed our lives, but destroyed us as a people. So I want to move on to relationships very quickly. We meet people over the course of our lives, and we understand that people in our lives are for a season, a reason, or a lifetime. Have you ever dealt with a situation where you realize that the meaning of a relationship, even though it may have seemed detrimental when it had come to an end, but you truly understood its purpose once you got on the other side of it?
Oh, wow. All of my relationships. God stripped me down to me, my children, and the dog. So I lost every single relationship that was air quote near and dear to my heart. But
Mhm.
it was not until God went through that stripping away process that all of this stuff was revealed. Like you said, sometimes you can't see what's what, like 10 feet in front of you.
Mhm.
And the stripping away of all of those relationships, God began to show me like, if I had kept these relationships in place, you never would operate and walk in your purpose. You never would have the strength to do what I needed you to do, because you have to understand that your friends are there to air quote protect you. and God is here to break and promote you. So
Mm,
where heaven is trying to move you ahead, your friends are like, and this is, I mean, this is when I was going through all my stuff. This is, and they meant well. Don't get me wrong. And your friends mean well, or you think they, I don't know, whatever it is, but they doing what they know to do at the time.
right.
And it was a conflict between what I was hearing in my prayer life versus what my friends were saying. And God was like, I can't have this conflict. I can't have this confusion. So in my prayer life, God would say, you need to confess your sin. You need to, the Bible teaches us that confess your sins one to another. Like you need to come clean. You need to cleanse and purge. But then I had my friends in my ear saying, girl, it's just some stuff I be taking to the grave. You ain't got to tell everything. You ain't got to do this. And then it made sense, kind of, if you walking in the natural, but I was not trying to continue to walk in the natural. When you know what your prayers are and when you know what you've asked God to do for you, you have now got, you have to guard your heart. You've got to guard and protect everything from any influences that are going to diminish God's work in your life. So God was like, I had to strip away all of that because I was fighting unnecessary battles. I was fighting with people that I didn't even know were upset with me. It was like everything was such a distraction. And God had to pull me away from all of that to realize just how crafty the enemy is. What
Mhm.
we have to understand is that the enemy, air quote, does not have a fit. Well, I had to take that back now because it's like everybody on this planet ain't human. Like there's some physical stuff on this planet. But anyway, by and large, the enemy does not have a physical presence here on earth. So the enemy, just like heaven, has to use people. And
Mhm.
so that's what God had me to really understand, that what St. Paul teaches us, we're not warring against flesh and blood. And so that's when God began to help me to see that these relationships were here for you when you were this person, but you're no longer this person now. So their role has been diminished. Like they can exit stage left now. They
Mhm.
have, and that's the way I look at all relationships, everything in my life. Some people are main characters, some people are making a cameo appearance, some people are like what they call them, understudy. Some people, everybody
Mhm.
has a role to play. And so
Mhm.
you have to really lean into understanding and asking God, well, what role are they playing in my life? So you don't get too attached to anybody or anything.
That's very important. I had to learn that when I found myself, now this is hindsight after the fact, when I found myself where I had placed people above God and made them idols. And it's easy to do that, specifically in the church.
Oh, yeah.
When we talk about our leaders in ministry, even on the job, those people that quote unquote have power, so to speak, or accolades, we find ourselves being in a place where we have made people idols in our lives. And therefore, we can't really see what God is doing. And when those people are stripped away, we find ourselves whining to God. Well, God, what did I do? I want to fix it, whatever happened. And we have to understand, well, first of all, what void were they filling in your life?
Right.
And then two, why is it that it upsets you so? If you are saying and you're confessing that you trust God in everything that He does. So when He removes people, you don't find yourself in a situation trying to have this argument with God. I need them back in my life when God is trying to show you, no, they've served their purpose, just as you said, and you need to move forward because there are some things that cannot connect to you until you disconnect from other things. And I remember there was a time specifically, it was a major relationship that ended. And I heard God so clearly. He said, now I can give you what you need because the person you were connected to, it would not have worked.
Yep. And this helps you to understand that there are personality types, like types of people, like types of um how can it's so fascinating when you realize that whole test the spirit by the spirit thing. If you look at any country in the world or any village, any town, there are people that fit personality types. If you
Mm-hmm.
go to a village or something in the Amazon, you ask like, who is your dominant person here? That person, their characteristics are going to match characteristics universally
Mm-hmm.
because it's the spirit that's
Mm-hmm.
behind that thing. And that's the thing that you have to understand. It's not necessarily that person, it's that spirit that needs to do the work that needs to be done. So a lot of times we think that it's that person that we're running from, or it's that person that we need to separate ourselves from. It has absolutely, this is when I stop being mad with people. I can't be mad with you because this is my spirit at this point required what this spirit needed from this scenario. So even though you may seem like you have a dominant personality, that's the spirit that's ruling you. That's the spirit that is over that is the authority over you,
Mm-hmm.
because you can tell like spirits will, like if you have a gentle spirit,
Correct.
so people are like, oh my gosh, she has such a gentle spirit. That's an indicator that you're in alignment with that spirit that is allowing you to be malleable, or you have a very aggressive spirit, or you have a very dominating spirit. So this is where you grab the clues as to what spirit realm you are attracting. So it's not necessarily that person, it's the spirit realm that you're being drawn to. So you can't get mad with people anymore or be upset with people,
No, you just have to place them where they're
where they
supposed to
belong.
be, where they belong. I know, especially with those who come with chaos,
Yep, that chaotic spirit.
place them on the other side of the door.
But but there is a time and place for everything.
Mm-hmm.
So it's not like any spirit is not useful, but it has to be properly placed. It has to be in the right environment. Like if you're just sitting down having a dinner, enjoying an evening, you don't need a table flipping chaotic spirit up in the room. But if you are in a protest, or you are in something where justice needs to be sought and all of those things, then that person has a place. You don't want somebody that's like, well, just roll over, do what they want to do, and so there's a time and a place for everything. And I think that that's the thing, is the placement.
Mm-hmm.
And that was the problem that I was having. I was placing myself in the wrong environments
Mm-hmm.
for where I needed to be. The people weren't wrong. I was just placed improperly. I knew I wasn't supposed to be there. I knew it. I knew I wasn't
Mm-hmm.
supposed to be there.
Yeah.
99% of the time, I wasn't supposed to be where I put myself.
Yeah. I was one of those people to get in a situation and I would ask myself the question, why am I here? You know you out of place.
Out of order. I remember this was in college because I came, straight fresh off the boat from Alabama. So you just never, I mean, I don't know what was wrong because I'm just like real easygoing, all of this, but I had this thing where I wanted to be, that had that bad boy mentality. Okay. Honey, that's a whole situation. Like they said, that's a whole situation right there. You think you want something, but then you, I was like, no, no, ma'am. Like, what's that comedian, that little girl? You out of order. I was so out of order. I was just out of order, and I couldn't be mad at that person because they were where they needed to be. They were where they needed to be. I was out of order.
Yeah, I tried that little situation. Thought I could be the tough girl, and that
I,
was short lived, real
I
quick.
ain't built like I ain't
I'm
built
not
like that.
built for this.
I ain't built like
That's,
that. I
that's
would
like,
be around people like, you say you want certain things or you say you want, and in hindsight, I realized it was just me wanting to maybe experience something new or to see something. But in hindsight, I was like, I was not created for this. I was not created to run from the cops. I was not created to. I'm not that physically fit. Like they would catch me every time. Every time.
so I remember, okay, I'm calling myself going out to the club. So, first of all, the first rule of any place you go, where's your exit? And do you have an exit? So, of course, this was some hole in the wall, and you only had one way in and one way out. And this is when the club scene stopped for me. And I was with one of my friends. I wanted to hang out. I was a big girl. I was grown. I could do this. I'm sassy. So we're on our way in. First indicator, there was only one way in and one way out. Second indicator, the girl that was in front of us had a gun in the back, in her back. Number two, now God is always giving you clues like you need to leave. So when we're getting ready to pay to go in to this place, all of a sudden I hear out of my right ear a trunk open on a car. I hear a gun go and bullets start flying everywhere. We're running for our lives. We duck behind the car and a bullet just hits the back of a car. And we get away. Thankfully, we didn't get hurt. And prayerfully, nobody else was too hurt in that situation. But it was one of those things like, if that is not the lesson that you need to understand, that that is not the place for you, don't go back ever again. So from that point forward, I never went back to one because I was like, um, no, that's not for me. I'm not that person. I'm just gonna go to work, go to school, and mind my business. I don't need to be hanging out. That's not for me. No, thank you.
And I think a lot of times it's an echo. I don't know what that. Do you hear the echo on your end? I think it just went away. Okay. I think a lot of times people override that and they just continue to push themselves, and then it morphs into something, and that's when like depression, anxiety, and all of those things seep in because you're out of alignment, but now you just in too deep. Now you've embedded yourself in these situations. You've become this person now, so people are expecting this of you. And when God began to show me like this is not you, like the whole club scene, I used to waitress, so I was kind of forced into that because of the nature of the work that I was doing. But at every turn, God was like, "This is not you." And people, and this is how funny it is when you allow heaven to do what heaven needs to do. Heaven is going to surround you. When heaven needs to protect your assignment, when heaven needs to protect the vision, you can try. And this is the thing, like in hindsight, in 2020, I realized that God, all that time, God was protecting the vision. God was protecting the assignment. God was like, you can go this far, but no further. And
Correct.
God would put angels, literal angels in my life. I never forget when I first came to DC, there were these, it was two, they were cousins, and we went to the same church. And one of the cousins took me all throughout. He said, I'm going to show you, I'm going to take you, I'll give you, because DC is only like 10 miles square. He said, I'm going to take you through DC and I'm going to show you where you need not be, okay? if you if you ever did, don't go there. Like they like it was almost like God was just putting me in bubble wrap Like you gonna get into some stuff, but if anybody wants to take you to these places, don't go. Like call
Mhm.
me, just And I really appreciate that because that shows me like how much God loves me, how
Mhm.
much God loves everyone that much. The problem is if you refuse the love, if
Yes.
you refuse the protection,
Mhm.
if you refuse that still small voice, if you override the Holy Spirit. This is why a lot of people are living lives that are frustrating because they've spent so many years overriding the voice of the Holy Spirit that they don't even know how to get back.
Mhm. Oh, I remember the people that were like, "What are you doing in here? You know you ain't nothing but a church girl. You don't have no business being in here. Come on, get on out of here. Come on. What you doing drinking? What you supposed to, and it was just, you're trying to be moderately offended, like, who you talking to? I could do so and so. They like, oh no, you can't. That trust me, that is not you at all whatsoever. Like, don't even front.
I
Not
d-
you.
and it's funny, like in hindsight, when I look back, I just look at how funny it had to look to the people that were in that life. Because I never forget, we went to a club and it was in the winter months. And so I left my coat in the car because it was like right there. I just left
Mhm.
it in the car. And one of my we all left our coats in the car now that I think about it. But then on the way out, the coat check room was so chaotic. And so one of my girlfriends went up there and I said, we did. And I'm standing next to her at the coat check. I was like, wait a minute, we didn't check coats. And then they were like, they had the tickets were all messed up and everything. And somebody was like, they held the coat up and they're like, who's, like just claim your coat. She's like, that's mine. I was like, girl walked out with like a full length leather coat with the fur. And
Mhm.
I'm like, wait, we didn't. She said, girl, just keep walking, just keep walking, just keep walking. I was like, did we just steal some coats? It was hilarious. I was like, wow, there are people out here that are really good at running game. Like, this
Mhm.
is their thing. Like, this is what they do. I personally am not that person. And
Mhm.
so I had to really understand where my place is and don't be ashamed of it. And I used to, want to be not the good girl, like
Mhm.
but I
Mhm.
literally did not know. I did not know. I'm just trying to be that we didn't come in with. She's like, girl, just shut up and keep walking. Just we can't
Mhm.
take you nowhere. I was
Mhm.
like,
Mhm. My face tells the story. I can't. My face. I don't have a good poker face at all. My face speaks. If I had words that could show up on my face every time I thought something, it was just like I would give it away. I couldn't do it. So I have to operate in a place of truth because I would get messed up every time. Every time. And I learned my lessons from not telling the truth. I would always get caught and it could be some of the simplest things. My tire would go flat, or I locked my keys in the car just because I told a lie somewhere else. Something would happen that I would have to be like, you know what? I sacrificed peace here because I did not tell the truth over there.
and that's how I can tell like people's addictions tell their story.
Oh, that's good.
When people are addicted to certain things, it's like that is unresolved sin. Like
Mm,
that is your, and that's the thing, like when you live a life for so long that is not the truth of who God has created you to be, you've got to cope with that thing.
mhm,
You've got to cope with it the best way you know how. And people's addictions tell their stories.
mhm.
I'm like, wow. It
Especially when you are quick to tell yourself that's not me. There are times when you have to sit and ask God, is it a possibility that that's a part of who I am? But
One of the
when,
best quotes or one of the best things that one of my former coaches used to say, if you spot it, you got it.
that's good.
If you spot it, you got it. You don't know what you're looking at if you don't know what you're looking at.
Hmm. Yeah, my grandmother would say the same thing. Hers was a little different. She said every hit dog is gonna holler.
Hallelujah. That's the one. That's the one. Every hit dog is gonna holler. Amen.
So if you the first one that got something to say first, it's 9 times out of 10 it's you.
It's you.
It's you. It's you. So when we think about hindsight, looking back, parenting, my Lord, being a parent is one of those places where every part of who we are gets tested and tried as we try to learn how to parent. Now, people can write books on parenting, there are different types of parenting skills, but nothing is specific to whatever situation or circumstance we have to work through as parents. Because as life goes on, situations and circumstances become who they are. Now, as your children are adults, my children are adults. When we think about how we parented our children early on, would you have done anything differently?
Oh boy. Um Probably not. I wouldn't have known what to do differently because that means for me to parent differently, that means I would have had to live differently.
That's true.
I would have had to be a totally different person. And so the parenting style matched the scenarios that we were in. When I started to realize that some of my parenting style was detrimental or some of my parenting style was not as beneficial as it could have been, that's when I knew I needed to start making adjustments. But me, my son, my daughter, my husband, we had, and this is the thing that I consistently like teach on earth as it is in heaven. For everything in the natural, there's a parallel and corresponding occurrence in the supernatural. Before we came here to earth, as it relates to like our family, I truly believe every family, every person, we had an agreement before we even got here.
Wow.
And it's like we're coming here together to learn X, Y, and Z. And in order to learn X, Y, and Z, these scenarios have to be in place.
Hmm.
And this is why it's so important. Like next year in our journaling work, we're going to spend a whole 12 months on writing our own individual books of life so
Mm.
that we can understand every scenario in our lives has happened by virtue of the fact that these are things that we needed to learn here while on in human form at this time. So as far as changing anything, I wouldn't change a thing because we all on some at some level agreed that these are the things that we needed to learn during this lifetime,
I've
if that
had to
makes sense.
learn some deep lessons and
And
some
that's the truth.
and
Yeah.
I didn't think I was gonna come out of either. I remember rolling around in the floor and saying, God, I ain't signed up for this. And he said, really? Yes, you did.
Yep.
You did.
And it's like I laugh when we get frustrated with our parents or when we get frustrated with our relatives. God put us in the families that we need. That's why we're in families versus relations. You can't get out of your family.
Mm-mm.
Like no matter how much you try, you still related in some, that though that generational, that lineage is traveling with you. So no matter how much you want to say, that's not me, that this God puts families together for a specific reason.
Hmm.
So you can't wiggle your way out of the
Hmm.
assignment. You can shirk the assignment, but it's still attached to you.
I'm a firm believer that within our families and our upbringing, there are things that are taught to us and there are things that are caught just by us being in the atmosphere.
Exactly.
And we really have to in our growing and evolving process or healing process, whatever it is that we had to go through, be it traumatic or loving, whatever experience that we have to understand that there are things that get deposited in us, good and bad, that we have to repeat the cycle or break the cycle. But we have to first acknowledge that it does exist. That in some instances, especially those that have been traumatic situations, but we considered it to be normal because it was an everyday thing in our family. But when we go out and we associate ourselves with other people who had a different experience, and we'll realize that no, when I'm just using a situation, your family shutting you up in a closet for 2 hours a day was not normal. That was trauma for you. But we say, oh, that's just what we did. If we were bad, that's just what we did. But that was trauma. And you have to really realize that we have to dissect those things in our life and really look at it. And when you think about the work that you're going to do next year within the community to do a life writing, that you have to sit and deal with the memories of your life to choose what direction you want to go in from there. So what is it that helps people to really accept the fact this was not right, but I do have a decision that I can make to change it? Because there's some people that I have met doing coaching and counseling, they don't want to believe that my family did something wrong because they think that because you're in your family it's perfect and they always do things right.
See, this is the thing. I don't know if you recall on the I was getting ready to sound real old on the TikTok. So they had this thing called the shadow journal or
Mm-hmm.
something like that. And for me, because of the work that I do and understanding like the spiritual components of everything, that shadow work scared me because people do not need, see, everything in the world is marketing.
Mm-hmm.
Everything in the world is like, let's sell as many copies as we
Mm-hmm.
can. But who's gonna be there to bandage up them wounds that you opening up and them scabs that you pulling back once that shadow work
Mm-hmm.
starts to work? See, this is the thing that people don't understand. When you start to go deeper into things of the spirit, you need to be guided through that process,
Yes, ma'am.
because to go through unaided or uneducated or not protected, that is where the enemy thrives,
Mm-hmm.
because that's going to pull away, the scabs or whatever. The anxiety is going to increase, the because you would hear people, and I'm like, are y'all listening to this? People like, I
Mm-hmm.
did one page and I cried for days. Honey, that is not something that you need to do by yourself.
No.
And so, like you were saying, that's why we're gonna dedicate to your book of life an entire, however long God is saying right now, the whole 12 months. Whole 12 months of going through in depth, writing who God and discerning who God has created you to be. We are leaving nothing unturned. But in order to do that, you have to do it in a way that is protected.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where a lot of people miss the opportunity to do the deeper things and to find peace with the things that you thought were normal in your family, and the things we do in this house stay in this house. Like, you're going to need the gift of a higher perspective to see exactly where things went awry and the reason things went awry and what is the spiritual reason for the thing going awry. And what we have to also think about is it's like this may be like, if for example you do not have children, you do not say you do not have children, this is your last opportunity to get this thing right here on earth, because you don't have your seed. So for example, Mike and I, we were talking about this the other, like we've talked about it periodically, but most recently about a few months ago. Our family, our personal family is dying out.
Mhm.
Our family, like hypothetically, if my sister doesn't have children, so that ends with her. My children, if they don't procreate, it ends with them. So the onus is on us individually to fulfill the promise while we have time here on earth. And so we have to be very cognizant that in order for us to really operate and experience the fullness of the blessing, we got to take this time seriously. And this is why it's so important to deal with the trauma, to deal with all of the blessing blockers in your life so that you can truly maximize your time and my time here on earth. Because you can't always depend on legacy.
No, you can't.
Mm-mm.
Mm-mm. Because now many people are choosing not to have children.
Mm-hmm.
So therefore, there isn't a legacy. And then you can, when we think, I think sometimes we miss the spiritual nature of the legacy. We
Mm-hmm.
think because I have a big home or I've built this compound and I have all this money, I can pass it on to someone and that's the legacy. But you also have the spiritual implications of the promises of God that you just spoke of that are a part of your lineage that are inherited as well. Just as, there's a scripture that talks about the sins of the father visit the children, but then there are also the blessings of the father that are also for the children as well. And then when you think about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, they blessed their children from one generation to the next. And when you go through the work and you do the healing and you position yourself properly in the spirit, when the blessings are flowing, you want to pass that on to your children so that
Mm-hmm.
they can pass it on generationally. And
Right.
this is Erica. I firmly believe that because of people previously in my generations who were not properly aligned, those blessings were not passed, but God's word will never turns to him void. So therefore, those blessings are still there up for grabs, so to
Mm-hmm.
speak. And
Mm-hmm.
when we align ourselves to receive that, we get all of that that has been there waiting for the lineage to capture it so that they can be properly aligned to receive it.
Mm-hmm. And and from like, I guess, like a historical perspective, from a generational perspective, every race has a different legacy story. Like every, like ours per se, we should honestly be probably the most spiritual beings on this planet. And what I mean by that is it's because all of historically, all of the physical things that we needed to live successfully here on earth were stripped and robbed and just, destroyed. And when people would try to get things together, it's like, the laws, the codes, all of those things were put in place to prevent us. However, we still here.
Mhm.
How is it that we are still, there's a book, Without Contract or Consent, and it's like people are amazed at the fact that African Americans are still here on this planet in spite of all of the atrocities. So that speaks powerfully to our spiritual undergirding. When everything was meant to destroy you and you still here, this is why for me, This is why, for me, it is so important to really tap into the spiritual aspects of life, because that is where our legacy resides. Our legacy resides spiritually, because I never forget many years ago, especially like when you talk about 2020, hindsight is 2020 and all of those things. And I used to always feel like I was behind the curve. I went to a predominantly white high school, and it was like I'm entering into the race and they're already 20, 30, 40 laps in. I'm like, I ain't gonna never catch up. And God said, in the physical, no, but spiritually, this is where you excel. And this is why I lean so heavily into the spiritual aspects of life, because that is how and where you fill the gap. When you feel like you're losing here on earth, you feel like every time I take 2 steps forward and 3 steps back, that is when you need to lean into your spiritual undergirding more than anything else. And that clears up that 2020 vision. Like that, anything where you may have been a little foggy on, why is this happening to me? Why is this? When you can rise higher and assess things from a spiritual perspective, it changes the game. Changes the game. So you never have to worry about missing anything. You never, like that. It clears up your vision real good. Real good.
And having that clarity is so powerful, because because that type of clarity breeds a different level of godly confidence in what it is that he has called you to, why, when, where, and how, so that you walk in a different level of boldness and assurance. So when you think about hindsight, all the things that happened in your life in the past, you know for sure all of this is what it took or has taken to get me to where I am, so that I can um, manifest what it is that God has already required from my life.
And if everyone is, for example, talking about hindsight and the things that you've done in the past, if everyone is pulling from your past, then that's an indicator that, how can I put it? Everybody's rummaging through the same trash pile. It's
Yeah.
like I'm pulling from my past, you pulling from my past, everybody's pulling from my past, and God was like, don't waste your time there. Let the people that want to rummage through the past, people that want to deal with things that happen, and while they're doing that, you're up here.
Hmm.
And this is why it's so important that you learn, like, use your past. If you want to use your past as a distraction.
Mm.
So let people go ahead. Like, I love it when, people are like, remember when you go ahead, y'all going over there and talk about that, because I'm getting ready to go
Hmm.
higher with this. God, help
Hmm.
me to see why they over here. Help me to see what I need to see. Help
Hmm.
me to hear what I need to hear. Help me to do what I need to do, so I can know how to use this powerfully. Turn that fire into fuel.
Correct. Hmm. And those stumbling blocks that people put in front of you from your past, there to become those stepping stones to you to elevate yourself. Because what you need to pull from that is just all the wisdom that you gained along the way. Because we gain all the wisdom if we take the time and look at what is it that I need to extract out of it, that's going to help me for what's going to be next. That's
And
powerful.
I love it, like when people use their past powerfully. I love this. I've supported this organization for years. Hookers for Jesus.
Didn't even know it existed.
Girl, I saw it one night. I said, these my people. I done found my people. I was like, hookers for Jesus. That's what I'm talking about. And turn the whole downside of that industry into something powerful. And
Mhm.
the young lady who heads the organization, she uses, everything that she gets and has created like a safe house for the prostitutes and the people to come in. And it's a beautiful story. But it's like people will want to use your past to destroy you. Oh, you're just a prostitute. You're this, you're that.
Mhm.
And while they over here talking about this, it's like, let me go on over here and build this house. Let me go
Mhm.
on over here and do this. So y'all just
Mhm.
gonna rummage through the
Mhm.
past, and God is gonna be using me in another way.
Mhm.
So no aspect of your life should be held in contempt by you. Like, you should not be so embarrassed. There is absolutely no aspect of my life that God cannot use.
And
No
has not
aspect.
already used.
Mm-hmm.
Because
Mm-hmm.
every aspect of my life, that in a moment it was ugly, but now it's a testament to not only the survival, but the resilience, the protection of God, the wisdom of God, um, and the love of God.
And it's meant to be ugly. It's supposed to be ugly because it's not God's best. But the
Hmm.
most important part, and it's not a movie, it's an organization. It's Hookers for Jesus. It's an actual nonprofit, and they do like help people get out of sex trafficking and all of those things. But the most important part is that when you are operating in God's economy, and this is where a lot of people miss it, God forgives everything, but there are consequences.
Hmm.
See, people think that when they do bad things and they make their confession and they like God is going to
Hmm.
wipe the slate clean, like, okay, you're good. Go back and do whatever you want to do now. There are consequences. And this is why I think about like scandals in the news and stuff like that. And then, honey, you know how many people turn to God out? Oh, do you know now they're a pastor? Now they're a minister? Now they have a church? Now they have this? But the consequences still exist.
Hmm.
And this is where people have to understand that even though your hindsight is 2020,
Hmm.
even though you have moved beyond that, the consequences are encoded in the process. So what that looks like is that when I confessed to Mike, it was a beautiful thing because
Hmm.
I felt the lift of that heaviness.
Hmm.
But the consequences encoded in that process was that I could not walk to the end of my block without Mike being like, "Where you going?" You know how long it took to build
Hmm.
and rebuild that trust?
Hmm.
That's one of the consequences. You're not just going to walk out of your sin or walk out of that dysfunctional relationship or that dysfunctional situation and not expect the consequences. And this is why a lot of people fail to remove themselves from situations that are not as productive as they should be because they don't want to deal with the consequences.
But the consequences still come.
They do. Whether or not you com- you mitigate the power of the consequences when you surrender.
Correct. But for those who don't want to surrender, you still going to get the consequences. And if you continue in it, there are additional consequences for every time you do what you do. But also, we can't just like for those who say they apologize and they just want you to just walk away from it like it didn't happen.
Right.
It's not me you got to worry about.
Right.
It's the Father that you have to worry about. So yes, you have. I heard a pastor. He was doing a teaching. He said when you offend someone and you apologize, you just want them to walk away from it, but you have to give them time not only to process it, but they have to heal. You can't rush a person's healing so that you can feel better because you were the person that caused the offense. And we have to allow people that time. And also on the flip side, we can't try to create this powerful nature over people to keep holding it over their head
No.
either.
See, this is, we talked about this yesterday. I don't know if you caught Leslie's lessons learned, but we talked about the balance of things.
Mm-hmm.
And this is how you can tell you're ready to move into God's purpose for that thing when it's balanced. So what that looks like is that I knew what it was like to cheat, and I knew what it was like to apologize and not receive that forgiveness. And I'll never forget, I'll be walking around, please forgive me, please. Every time I just wanted Mike to just say, poof, it's done. I
Mm-hmm.
forgive you. We can walk into the sunset and all of that. That didn't happen. But then when the tables turned and he was in that position, it was a whole nother ballpark. And it was like, he was like, can't you just let this go? And I was like, isn't this interesting? And it's
Mm-hmm.
so humbling when you're able to be on both sides
Mm-hmm.
of see both sides of the coin. That is what prepares you for the assignment. Because you can't teach powerfully just from one perspective.
That's good.
You cannot. And that 2020, that hindsight, if God is using you, then you're going to have to see it from all angles. And a lot of times people won't let go enough for God to use them on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
This is how a lot of people miss their opportunity to be used powerfully by God, because they're willing to do to other people, but they can't receive. Let's take one of the hot topics in the news, Diddy. Let's take Diddy for example. If Diddy had received, I don't know what he's received. I don't know what has happened in his personal life. But I can guarantee you that it is nothing as traumatic as what he's done to other people, because if it were, you wouldn't do it.
Correct.
You wouldn't do it. So there's a balance that has to come. And even if he gets to the point and he says, God is going to see me through this, and God will, but the consequences remain.
Mm-hmm.
And this is why examples like that are why people are so jaded, because they see people of that magnitude doing whatever they want to do,
Mm-hmm.
however they want to do it, and they don't see the consequences.
Mm-hmm.
So they don't realize and understand the spiritual dynamics
Mm-hmm.
that are surrounding that thing. And that is a very dangerous place to be.
Yes.
Mm.
When we desire to be someone because we see things like that, and they work to be that person, but they don't understand the weight that comes with it. And
Mm-mm.
see, a lot of times people want to be someone else for whatever reason, but they don't understand. And you talked about this before. I don't want somebody else's difficulty, strife, teaching experiences. I had enough to go through mine than to have to go through the stuff that come with yours. Because everybody got different types of stuff that come with their growth and maturation process. I had enough with mine. I don't want yours
Mm-hmm.
because I don't
Mm-hmm.
know what's required for your life. I
And
don't.
this is why I love like this work, like the work that you're doing, the work that I'm doing. And I've had people, and it's the way that the world is set up. There are like how many billions of people on this planet? Like I've
Yeah.
had people that have pulled me to the side and said, I want to do the work that you do. Like I want to do, baby, you don't want my work. You want your work. Like you want to do what God has given you to do. Like there's no reason to try to duplicate my message. Honey, I have a hard time articulating my own message. So you don't want to recreate what I'm doing. You don't want to be a carbon copy of anybody. You want to stand strongly in the truth of who God has created you to be And then you lock arms with someone. That's why I'm like, look, I can't do it. Go see Errica about that. I don't care about no emotional intelligence. I'm not that emotionally intelligent. Like go over there because she gonna help you get through it in a very healthy way. I'm gonna make it messy for you. I'm gonna kick up all of the dust. I'm gonna do all. So when I kick it up, then you need to go over here and go talk to Erica so she can help you deal with it properly. Okay, in a good, emotionally intelligent way. So when you're doing that, you don't have to work. You won't have that place where you're like, I wonder what would have happened if.
Correct.
When you allow everyone to be who they need to be and operate in their own zone of genius, everybody can be powerful in their own way. And so you don't have all of that regret. You don't have all of that. I wonder if I stepped on anybody's toes. I wonder if I did anything. I want to be surrounded by people that are greater than me. I want to be surrounded by people that know more than me. I want to be surrounded by that because that eliminates the requirement to go back and say, I wonder if I could have done it differently.
That's
So you
fact.
don't have to we don't have to have topics like this about hindsight is 2020 because we know that as we're moving ahead that this is not going to come back to bite me.
Mm-hmm.
That I'm right where I need to be doing what I need to do with the people that I need to do it. And I do not, ever since I've met you, I've never second guessed anything about you. I've never been like, I wonder if Errica meant good for that. I wonder if
Mm-hmm.
I don't have to do that. I don't have to do that with any of my relationships now.
Mm-mm.
Back in the day, I'm still questioning some of them. Anyway, I know we over time, but yeah, that's
That's oh yeah, that's a whole nother conversation. That's a whole nother conversation. So we are already at our time, but I do want to put this back up. If you want to get more information about the 1212 community, please go to the 1212community.com. And currently right now, rounding out about money. I'm just gonna leave it right there, money. And it's not what you think. It's not a get rich quick and how it's about how do you handle money God's way and understanding the economy out of heaven and what does that look like for you and journaling about money. I think sometimes we'll write manifestations about money, we'll write affirmations about money, we'll try to attract money. We have all these abundant songs and stuff that's circling around. This ain't that. This ain't that. This is about your relationship and understanding money for what it is. So at least you just take a few minutes and talk to them about where we are with that. Because I want you to go to the 1212community.com so that you can get the replay for it. So you can understand what's happening. So I'll let you talk about that real quick.
oh wow. The way I'll just go through the way that this evolved. The money challenge evolved, money God's way was because of that gap that we have. You know, there are people out here with credit scores of a 2, or it's like my bank account at one point was like the lottery in reverse. Okay, there are people out here with very serious financial problems, but that don't stop God. I get so tired of people putting assignments on hold, waiting on worldly alignment before they can move. And what I mean by that is, if God says, I want you to have this, or I want you to do this, or whatever, and you immediately go to the world system. And the world says, in order for you to do this, you need to have like a 10,000 credit score or something crazy. And you need to have 50% of the deposit in the bank. And you need to have all of this. And this is how the world differentiates between the haves and the have-nots. In God's economy, you can have whatever God says that heaven wants you to have, but you have to know how to get it. And the problem is that so many people waste their time trying. Money slows you down, actually. Money is a man-made construct and it's heavy. And if you are only working for the money, then you are missing out on so many blessings that heaven has. So the money journal is all about helping you to understand that money is needed when money is needed, but money is not needed when it is not needed. And the spiritual aspects of everything that you need are already available to you, but you've got to be spiritually aligned. You've got to be pure in spirit. Like, heaven is not just because you recite a mantra, just because you recite an affirmation, just because you sing the prayer of Jabez or whatever it is, doesn't mean that heaven is going to rain down abundance on you. You have to understand where you are in relation to that, and that is all about your relationship with money. And it's kind of, you got to get into it, but once you start to understand, like, my money, my let me tell. Okay, I had time for another little story.
Yeah.
Okay, so this your platform. We sit up here like this how it works. Like, this her platform, so she can do. But the most important thing is that never, ever, ever let money stop you. Never let the thought of not having the money stop you. And this is where so many people miss the opportunity to operate powerfully, because the world tells you money slows you down. Because the more money you have, you've got to account for it. The more the world wants you to have as much money as possible
Mm-hmm.
so that the world can control you more.
Mm.
And that is a very precarious place to be. This hinders your spiritual growth. This hinders your ability to hear more from heaven, because if all you're only listening through the megaphone of money, you're gonna miss a lot of opportunities that heaven has for you. I have had bills paid with no, like, we were getting ready to be served. Like, not served, we were served. We were getting ready to, my husband's check was getting ready to be, this was years ago, was getting ready to be garnished because of some bill we didn't pay. I received a letter a year before this, and God said, hang on to this letter, you're gonna need it. I put it in my junk drawer. And that's how the decluttering challenge came
Mm-hmm.
about. God was like, go clean out that junk drawer. I cleaned out the junk drawer and I saw the letter. I pulled the letter out. God said, don't throw that away. You're going to need that. A few days later, I get the envelope saying that your, Mike Johnson's check is going to be garnished, da 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 da. And I was like, no, we can't do that, because I kind of knew the people in payroll and I didn't want them to spread our business all around, all of
Mm-hmm.
that. God said, now go to that letter. That letter said, for this very company that was getting ready to garnish us, it said that your next payment is not due until, and it was something like 2020, something like this year. This was like many years after. And I called the attorney's office that was handling it. And I was like, hi, Miss Attorney Lady. I see this garnishment that we've received, but I just didn't pay the bill. Now I'm playing all innocent, right? I just didn't pay the bill because I have a notice here that says the bill is not due until 20. No, you do not. I said, yes, I do. And this is when you could fax stuff. You not had a phone and everything. So I ran to like the Kinko's or somewhere and faxed it. And I called them. Hi, Miss Attorney Lady. Did you get the document that I sent you? And this is all I heard. We'll be in touch. Honey, they
Oh.
had to cancel everything because that was a legally binding document that
Mm-hmm.
said, so they had no right to garnish us because we had this paper that said the payment's not due until. That's what I'm talking about. But see, most people will be scrambling around trying to find the $20,000, the $50,000, working, swinging from poles, doing all of these things for the money.
Hmm.
But in God's economy, the whole world is your playground. So anyway, so that kind of sums it up. But yeah, that's how I want everybody to live that life independent of credit scores, that life independent. If your last day on earth, God forbid, is 6 months from now, and it's going to take you at least 12 months to get your credit score up to where it needs to be, baby, you ain't going to make it. You ain't going to make it. So you're going to put all of this off until we've got to stop putting things off and move when God tells us to move in the way that God tells us to move. So money God's way is a powerful way to live. I've been living this way forever, and it hasn't failed me yet. Hasn't failed me yet.
All right, y'all. Go to the 1212 community, get the replay. It will change your life.
I love it. Thank you, Erica. Thank you so much for this.
Oh, yes. Thank you so much. We love you all. We thank you so much. I also have another, this is to the Stand store. We have some ebooks that are out there for you all. If you would like to grab a few of those and how to be resilient, understanding yourself, a place of self discovery. We appreciate you all being here tonight. Thank you so much for joining us, and we'll see you all next week. You all take